debate on the risks for humanity of nuclear conflict and its devastating humanitarian consequences. And states parties will also, amongst others, consider the status and the operation of the treaty, addressing issues related to its universality, the total elimination of nuclear weapons, victim assistance, and security concerns. And we have an esteemed panel with us today who will talk you through what the third meeting of state parties will be discussing this week, and what their expectations are, and what they anticipate the outcome of this week's meeting to be. I'll introduce them all briefly, and they will be speaking to you one by one, delivering very brief remarks, after which we'll open the floor for any comments and questions that you might have here in the room, and also for those of us joining online. We have with us the president of the third meeting of states parties to the TPNW, Ambassador Akan Rakhmetullin, who is the first deputy foreign minister of Kazakhstan. We are also joined at the far left, to your right, by Ms. Melissa Parke, who is the executive director of the International Campaign to Abolish Nuclear Weapons. Also with us today is Ms. Eirini Giorgiou, who is the legal advisor of the International Committee of the Red Cross. And we're joined by Ms. Taraem Taukaro of Kiribati, who is a representative of affected community. As I mentioned, each of our panelists will deliver very brief remarks, after which we'll open the floor for questions. Ambassador, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Dear colleagues, it's really a great honor and pleasure to be here with you this afternoon. And today, the very first day of the third meeting of the state parties to the TPNW, to which we pay very particular attention and hope that it will be another very good opportunity for all participating states, for NGOs, for other stakeholders to exchange their views, to compare notes of what we have attained, and to identify ways forward towards the review conference. And it's an honor for me as being the representative of Kazakhstan and the country which used to be the nuclear state, the part of the Soviet Union. Then it got rid of its nuclear arsenal, nuclear infrastructure, and still having some issues with the negative consequences of nuclear tests. To represent my country, the bigger region, at this conference, and this gives us special responsibility and special opportunity to move forward the process. And of course, I just wanted to stress upon the input this process received from the first and second MSP conferences, respectively in Vienna and here in New York, chaired by Austria and Mexico last year. And I hope that the exchange of views will be very constructive and really result-oriented. We are now working on the final documents, on final declaration, on the decisions on various aspects, on various facets of our process. And I just wanted to refer to the very good example of 4 new ratifications that has taken place recently, namely Indonesia, Sao Tome and Principe, Sierra Leone, and the Solomon Islands. And we believe that the TPNW, with all its diverse stakeholders, as I said, official delegations, non-governmental organizations, international non-governmental organizations, will give very strong signal to the international community in our way towards denuclearization, towards the world free of nuclear weapons. And we have to work on the, according to the structure of the treaty on the universalization, to emphasize the critical need for broader participation and ratification to increase the number of those who ratified and joined the treaty. And of course, where Kazakhstan and Kiribati are very active in trying to find out the way to solve the issue of affected communities. We call it the working group on victims assistance and environment remediation, and we very much look forward that the certain decision will be adopted upon the completion of this conference. So, dear colleagues, this is in brief what we expect from the conference, and I remain open for any of your questions you may have. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Rakhmetullin, for outlining your expectations for the week ahead. It's my distinct pleasure now to give the floor to Ms. Melissa Parke, who is the Executive Director of the International Campaign to Abolish Nuclear Weapons.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is great to be here. Hi, everyone. I want to firstly thank President Rakhmetullin of Kazakhstan for his outstanding leadership of this important meeting, which is taking place during the 80th anniversary year of the US atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the 80th anniversary year of the first nuclear weapons test, Trinity, which has been followed by more than 2,000 nuclear weapons tests around the world, and the 80th anniversary year of the creation of the United Nations, whose first resolution was for the elimination of nuclear weapons. There are 5 key messages that Akan is emphasising at this third meeting of the UN Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. 1. So long as any country has nuclear weapons and insists they are essential for their security, others will want them. The continued failure of possessor states to advance disarmament will only lead to further proliferation. 2. So long as any country retains nuclear weapons, they are bound one day to be used, by accident or design. Thus, the only way to eliminate the risk of their use is to eliminate the weapons themselves. 3. Any such use would be utterly catastrophic for life on this planet, as highlighted by the incontrovertible evidence from Hiroshima and Nagasaki and from the more than 2,000 nuclear weapons tests carried out around the world, mainly on colonised and indigenous peoples. This treaty provides the only international framework for addressing these harms to people and the environment, and for ensuring that they never happen again. 4. As TPNW states parties have made clear, the promotion and reliance of nuclear deterrence poses an existential security risk for all countries and all peoples. Nuclear weapons are the only devices ever created that have the capacity to destroy all complex life on Earth. They are therefore everyone's business, and not just the narrow national security concern of nuclear-armed states and nuclear complicit states. And 5, disarmament is eminently achievable. In fact, of all the global challenges we face, this is the least complex. Humans built nuclear weapons. Humans can dismantle them. All it requires is political will and leadership. And at present, that leadership is coming from TPNW states, parties, civil society, communities impacted by nuclear weapons use and testing, and from parliamentarians, scientists, artists, cities, and investors who are taking their money out of nuclear weapons and putting them into more constructive uses. This treaty, this meeting of states parties, is the only place where you will actually see action happening on nuclear disarmament. Half the world has joined this treaty already. A global majority of nations support this treaty and have gathered here to be part of the solution, not the problem, along with 1,000 people from civil society who are registered at this conference. This is democratising the nuclear weapons debate. It's bringing it out of the hands of the Permanent 5 of the Security Council, all nuclear armed states, and into the General Assembly, where every country has an equal vote. It's an evidence-based approach that believes policy decisions regarding nuclear weapons should be based on the available scientific facts on the consequences and risks of nuclear weapons, rather than on the uncertain security benefits of nuclear deterrence. A growing body of scientific research is showing that peoples of all states and anywhere on Earth are at considerable risk of becoming collateral damage from nuclear conflict or nuclear explosions. The security of all of humanity is diminished by the continued possession of and reliance on nuclear weapons by nuclear-armed and nuclear complicit states. We expect this meeting will strongly condemn nuclear deterrence, nuclear weapons modernisation and nuclear threats, and will expose the fallacy of a limited nuclear war. As nuclear war exercises like Proud Prophet and others have shown time and again, and as demonstrated so brilliantly in Annie Jacobson's best-selling book, Nuclear War, A Scenario, there is no such thing as a limited nuclear war, because any use of nuclear weapons leads almost automatically to annihilation. From an escalatory exchange. Annie Jacobson and Professor Zia Mian, the co-chair of the TPNW Scientific Advisory Group, will be part of the second thematic panel of the meeting tomorrow morning on the true costs of nuclear war. So I urge everyone to listen to that. Our focus must remain on elimination and not simply on extending the period of non-use of nuclear weapons. And we must insist that elimination be pursued not as a distant dream, but an urgent necessity. Without action soon, a nuclear catastrophe is all but inevitable. And as John F. Kennedy famously warned in this very building in 1961, the weapons of war must be abolished before they abolish us. Martin Luther King Jr. also talked about the fierce urgency of now, and that there is such a thing as being too late. More than 6 decades on, it is clear our time is running out, the doomsday clock is ticking, and the TPNW is the only plan to save the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Clark, for reminding us what is at stake. I will now hand the floor to our third speaker of today, who is Ms. Eirini Giorgiou, the legal advisor of the International Committee of the Red Cross. Ms. Giorgiou, you have the floor.
Thank you, Suzanne, and thank you everyone for joining us this afternoon. As Melissa said, this year marks the 80th anniversary of the atomic bombings that targeted Hiroshima and Nagasaki, taking the lives of over 400,000 people, and that's a conservative estimate. The International Committee of the Red Cross and the Japanese Red Cross Society witnessed firsthand this unprecedented tragedy as they tried in near impossible conditions to assist the dying and injured. And since 1945, the ICRC and the entire International Red Cross and Red Crescent movement have been calling for the prohibition and complete elimination of nuclear weapons in the interest of humanity. Today, nuclear weapons continue to cast a deep shadow over a common future. The risk that they are used deliberately or inadvertently has grown exponentially. It's fueled by ongoing conflicts, strident nuclear rhetoric, and various technological developments. As international community, we have a duty to prevent the unspeakable from happening again. The Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons is a response to this urgent imperative. It prohibits nuclear weapons as a necessary step towards their elimination and provides a realistic roadmap for getting there. While nuclear deterrence theories are regaining vigor and appeal, despite their tremendous risks and unproved benefits, the TPNW's momentum is far from shrinking. It is growing. More than half of the world's states have expressed their will to be bound by the treaty and have subscribed to its vision for a just and peaceful future without nuclear weapons. We call on all remaining states to follow suit. We commend states parties and the presidencies to the TPNW meetings for their steadfast commitment and efforts to implement the treaty's wide-reaching provisions fully and effectively, and we commend them for continuing to advocate in words and in action for urgent progress towards nuclear disarmament. Since their creation, the use and testing of nuclear weapons has gravely affected and continues to affect entire communities and large areas in many parts of the globe. Mitigating the tremendous harm caused by nuclear weapons use and testing is an important element of achieving a nuclear weapon-free world, and the TPNW seeks to do so by establishing robust obligations on victim assistance and environmental remediation. Nuclear weapons defy every tenet of law, ethics, and humanity. Any use, be it strategic or tactical, offensive or defensive, would entail the risk of escalation to nuclear war, endangering the very survival of life on our planet. It is extremely doubtful that nuclear weapons could ever be used in compliance with international humanitarian law, which puts limits on how wars are fought, and any use or threat of use of nuclear weapons would be abhorrent to the principles of humanity and the dictates of public conscience. Speaking of threats, despite the growing body of evidence on the catastrophic humanitarian consequences of nuclear weapons, threatening to use them has become commonplace. Such threats fuel tensions, trigger an arms race, and increase the risk of actual use, eroding the nuclear taboo. So we call on all states to refrain from nuclear threats and to condemn them consistently and unequivocally. At the third meeting of states parties, which began today, important decisions will be taken to strengthen the impact of the treaty. This brings us one step closer to nuclear disarmament, although the road ahead is still long. We appreciate the role states parties have entrusted the ICRC with, within the bodies and mechanisms established to facilitate the implementation of the treaty. From our side, we will continue working with states parties, as well as other states that are today outside the TPNW, to achieve the treaty's humanitarian objectives until a nuclear weapon-free world becomes a reality. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Giorgiou, for the perspective of the ICRC. That brings us to our final speaker on the panel today, and I'm very pleased to hand the floor to Ms. Taraem Taukaro of Kiribati, who is with us here today representing affected communities. You have the floor.
Excellencies, esteemed friends and colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, I bring you all the warm greetings from Kiribati. My name is Taraem Taukaro, and I come from Christmas Island in the Republic of Kiribati. I am a married woman with 2 beautiful daughters. I am here today thanks to the support of the government of Kiribati, the Nuclear Age Peace Foundation, and its youth initiative, Reverse the Trend. As a third-generation victim of the nuclear test conducted on Christmas Island by the British government in 1957 and 1958, followed by American test in 1962, I feel honored to participate in this press conference alongside distinguished speakers. I am sincerely grateful for the opportunity to share our perspectives and stories regarding the humanitarian impacts, the significance of nuclear justice, and Articles 6 and 7. Nuclear tests have left indelible and horrifying memories for victims everywhere they occurred. My mother was only 2 years old when the first British bomb was tested on Christmas, and 7 when the last American bomb was detonated. Her father was relocated from their home island in the southern part of Kiribati to work on a coconut plantation in Christmas Island in 1955. Within a year of their arrival, the nuclear test commenced and continued for 6 years, profoundly impacting our lives. My family endured the same trauma experienced by the 187 other families living on Christmas Island during the nuclear test. As my mother has recounted, the local people were instructed to walk from their homes to the wharf around midnight to board the Narvik, a British ship anchored near the island. From the ship, they heard the thunderous explosions outside when the bombs detonated. There were also times when they gathered at the old London tennis court, where they experienced the bomb blast, saw blinding flashes of lights, and felt the intense heat even while huddled under blankets. despite the bombs being detonated miles away on the southeast side of the island. Though these tests were conducted 68 years ago, the detrimental effects persist, particularly concerning our health. My mother has suffered from gum bleeding. My older sister was born deaf, and I experienced unexplained fainting spells during my teenage years. Many other families have faced various types of cancer, including cervical and breast cancer. My colleague, Oima Johnson, who is also part of the Kiribati youth delegation at this third MSB, suffers from frequent headaches, and some of her family members have tragically lost their lives due to these health issues. I firmly believe that we, the victims of nuclear tests, deserve nuclear justice, and the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons embodies that hope. I trust that the deliberations and discussions surrounding Articles 6 and 7, as well as the outcomes of this TBNW meeting of the state parties, will yield positive news that I can share with my family and the members of the Victims Association back in Kiribati. Thank you very much. Kamdaba.
Thank you so very much for sharing that with us, your experience and that of your family dating back all those years and of the devastating impacts of nuclear testing. This concludes the panel portion for the press briefing.